Hi, welcome to this short video that shows how to update a Control Techniques drive's EtherCAT interface firmware over AoE or ADS using Connect. So the hardware that we're going to be using in this particular demonstration is PC loaded with Connect software, loaded with TwinCAT, Ethernet connection through to our Beckhoff hardware, which in this case is a Beckhoff IPC, but it works exactly the same if it's a PLC or controller. One of the ports on that has been configured for EtherCAT. That's then connected through to an SI EtherCAT, which gives this drive, which is a Unidrive M700, EtherCAT capability. If you're using our dedicated servo products that have an EtherCAT option module fitted, so a factory fitted one, such as Digitax HD M753, that actually has it all built in, and you'll find that all of the steps that you're going to follow are identical, whether it's a built-in interface or whether it's via a plug-in option. So before we get going into the demonstration, I just want to point out that for this video and all the other videos in the TwinCAT series of getting started videos and how-to type guides, there's a section in this user guide for each of them that follows along with all of the steps that are in the videos. So that means if you don't want to take notes whilst you go in, or if you prefer to learn by reading step-by-step instructions, all you've got to do is go to this section, how to upgrade EtherCAT interface firmware using Connect, within the book, and then that will take you through the steps, and there'll be a link to this guide in the description. So the first thing that we need to do then before we go and upgrade the firmware is we need to also upgrade the ESI files. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So here we have my folder where I tend to store my EtherCAT files on my laptop, and you can see that what you'll end up with is a pair of files. So you'll end up with a firmware file which is .img type, and we'll go and use this later in the demonstration. And then we also have a zip file which contains all of the .xml files, which are the ESI descriptions for EtherCAT. So what I've done ahead of time, I've unzipped this, and then I've ended up with this folder. So if I go into the folder, go to Standard, and here are all the files that are required to update TwinCAT. So I'm going to do Control A, Control C to copy all of that. And then I'm going to go and put that into my TwinCAT folder. So this is the path, C TwinCAT 3.1 config IO EtherCAT. Now if you've got a slightly newer version of TwinCAT, they've actually changed this path. So instead of being C TwinCAT 3.1, it's C program files x86 Beckhoff, then TwinCAT 3.1 config IO EtherCAT. So it's almost the same path, it's just got program files x86 and Beckhoff at the beginning of it instead. But that's not the software that I'm running on my laptop at this moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm not interested in preserving these files because I can go get them later if I want them. So I'm just going to go and delete everything out that's Control Techniques related. So there we go, all gone. And now I'm going to paste in, so I've just used Control V to paste. And there we go, there's the new Unidrive M folder, and here are all of the ESI description files, which are .xml format. Okay, so what I'm actually doing in this demo is I'm upgrading my drive from 1.12.0.24 firmware to 2.0.0.5 firmware. So I've updated the files, so these are now the 2.0.0.5 firmware files. I'm just going to close those folders. And now let's get into connecting our drive up. So I've got a very basic project set up here, and I'm just going to connect it to my target. If you have been connected before, then your target will be listed here. If not, click on choose target system and sort of follow the prompts in order to be able to find your target. So I've connected to this particular IPC before, so I don't need to do any of that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to right click on devices, and I'm going to scan, click OK to that message, and here we go, it's gone and found my EtherCAT interface. So I'm going to click OK to that, scan for boxes, boxes in this context mean, anything that's connected to the EtherCAT interface, which in our case is our drive. So I'm going to click OK to add an NC axis. It's not strictly necessary, but it won't hurt anything for what we're trying to show. So there we go. So we've got a project, we've scanned it, we've got our device in there, and then before we go to connect and begin to try to load the firmware, there's one thing that we do have to do, and this is because when we change the firmware, the revision number changes, and what we don't want is our ADS comms to be lost partway through the change. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to uncheck these two boxes, click OK, so it won't be checking product code and it won't be checking for revision number, and then we won't lose ADS comms partway through the firmware transfer. So I'm going to click OK to that, and then I am going to activate the configuration so it accepts those changes to the startup checks. And we'll give it a moment. And there we go, that's working. So you can see that we're kind of online. We can see that the system is happy. This rotating cog gives us some confidence that everything is working how it should do. So let's go to connect, and then I'm going to go new project from network scan because that's the easiest way to work. Now there are a load of different ways that you can connect to the drive. You can connect via Bluetooth if you wanted to. I can show you what that looks like. So there we go. That's my particular drive because I've paired to this particular one before. You get Bluetooth capability with the drive if you have a KI Keypad Plus. If you haven't got one of those, then you won't get this capability. I've got an Ethernet connection, so I can show you what that one looks like. Give it a second. There you go. So it's gone and found that automatically. But for quite a lot of you out there, you'll probably want to use this one, which is scan TwinCAT ADS network, and for that you need this ADS address. So I'll just flip back here and show you where that ADS address lives. So it is, if you double click on this on the EtherCAT device, there you go, this is the net ID that you need. So if I copy that out and then go back here, what you do is paste that in there. You see, for my particular setup, it already knows this because I've already connected to this device before. For you, that's where you would go and get the address. So I'm going to click scan ADS network. You can see that it's working. There's our ADS address there, and you can see the typical EtherCAT slave node number there, and it's telling us that it's a Unidrive M700. Okay, so I think we're ready to go. I'm just going to leave it with this My Project 165 title. And there we go. We can see that the drive is already online, so we're ready to do some work. In this case, we're not going to be doing a drive configuration, we're just doing a firmware update. So what we need when we're doing the firmware update is to go to the maintenance category. So I'm just going to double click on that, and here we go, we've got change firmware. Click change firmware, we then select slot 3 for the SI EtherCAT, and now I'm going to go and browse for our new firmware file, which you can see has to be of type .img. So let's look for that, and there we go, there's the new file. So I'm going to click open and next, and then start download. So there's a bit of a wait whilst it saves parameters and waits for option modules to load the firmware and waits for delays for the firmware to come out of dual port RAM and all that kind of stuff. So we'll just wait for that to happen. There we go. Now it's just writing the parameters back into the product. And that's it. That's finished. So I'm going to close that, and then I'm going to come back to the TwinCAT environment. So what you will notice is that it lost some comms during that, and also, although what we've done when we transferred the firmware, we actually bypassed all of the checks, let's say, for this particular slave here, to say don't check product code, don't check revision number, and you could quite happily leave it like that if you wanted to, but if you want to make it so it has got its product code and revision number checks, then there are a couple of extra things that you've got to do in order to update the device basically that this is represented as in the Solution Explorer. Okay, so one of the things that you could do if you wanted to, you could just delete this node, right click on here, and then go scan for devices. That would be one way. There's another way that you can do it. You can say change to compatible type. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down this list, and I am looking for this one here. It just says Unidrive, and there's no extra characters, no names or anything like that. So all these ones that say all modes, RFCS, RFCA, etc. When you're changing to the version 2 firmware, which is what we've just done, you are interested in this one. So I'm going to select that, and I'm going to go OK. Now the advantage of doing it this way is that if you'd had any additional PDO mappings, so for example if you'd taken the time to map touch probe, for example, into your axis, when you make the change from the old ESI file to the new one for version 2 firmware, it preserves all of your setup, and you haven't got to, for example, reconnect your axis, for example. So if you deleted and kind of gone that way, you'd have probably have had to come back in and relinked it to the IO because you deleted it. Okay, hope you found this useful. Thanks for watching.